Hi, Randy, K7AGE. I'm going to talk to you about the RigExpert Stick 230 Antenna Analyzer. It's all in this little box. It's pretty neat. Open it up. Oh, I want to show you on the back here. Got a big sticker for a 2-year warranty. Good to know. So in the box is the stick antenna analyzer, and it's handheld. You can see it fits in the hand pretty easily. It's got a protective cover on the top for the SL239 connector. Also in the box is what they call the 1-2-3 guide to get you started. You'll probably still want to download the manual off of their website. In fact, there's a QR code there. Point your camera or your tablet there and you'll get the manual. Also in the box is a neck strap, which can connect to the bottom of the RigExpert here. So you can put this around your neck and carry your SWR analyzer, antenna analyzer, up the tower with you. I will not be demonstrating that in this video. And the other thing in the box is a USB-C cable. This is both to charge the unit and also to allow it to connect to applications running under Windows, iOS, and Android. We'll look at those later. The RigExpert covers from 0.1 megahertz all the way up to 230 megahertz. So this is usable on the 2,200 meter band, the 600 meter band, then all the bands that you're probably familiar with, all the way up to the 1.25 meter band, which is the 220 megahertz band here in the US. It has this e-paper display. We'll see a close-up of it later, but this thing like sips current. The battery life in this, I don't know. It just runs and runs and runs and runs. And if you plug it into the computer or something while you're transferring data or using it, it's also charging. So I've never run this down more than a single bar in the time that I've been playing with it. So it sips current. It uses a standard 18650 battery, and it's in behind this cover here on the back. There's a couple of screws, you take it out, and you can get to the battery so you can replace it yourself in the future if you need it. Another neat feature of the e-paper display is that you can see this thing in the sunshine. It's not like an LCD where you have to go out there and shade it and stuff and try and be able to read it. This thing, you can see it no problem in the sunshine. So that's a big plus. The Stick 230 weighs about 6.5 ounces, so it's fairly light. So you could put it in your shirt pocket and carry it around. No problem. Okay, so I think it's time to rearrange things here in the studio and get some close-ups here and hook it up to something and step through some of the operations and the features of the Stick 230. And before we get into the operation of the RigExpert Stick 230, I'd like to thank DX Engineering and RigExpert for sending me this unit to review. Thank you. So I can finally remove the screen protector. So even when the Stick 230 is turned off, you still see this on the display. So it says basically to press the red square box to turn on the Stick 230. And you'll see the display flash, and now it's up and running. It shows you your battery level there, which is full. And to turn it off, you just hold this down for a little longer press and it turns off. So turning the unit on gets us into the home screen, and across the top we have indications for battery level, Bluetooth activity if we're connected to the PC with the USB connection. There's 4 main operational modes here: single, multi, ham, and free. And you have the plus minus left right arrows there, so pressing any one of these 4 keys would take us into that mode. Pressing the triangle here takes us into a little mini help screen, and here it's screen 5 of 5 where I can undo some user settings. If I go to 1 here, it'd be single mode, parameters at a single frequency, multi auto scan bands for resonant, ham SW chart at amateur bands, and free SW chart at a custom range. And again, the adjust user settings, and to return, press the red square. Pressing the minus key takes us into the single mode of measurements. First thing we notice is that the antenna signal icon at the top is blinking. That means it's constantly sampling the antenna or the load for the values here. And you'll see the return loss here bouncing around a little bit. Pressing the red square key stops that, so now it's frozen on the readings, and pressing the yellow arrow here will start that up again. So I'm going to stop it. There's 5 screens of data available. We're in screen 1 of 5. And again, it shows the working frequency, the SWR, and the return loss. Pressing the arrow key takes us to screen 2, and we see the operating frequency, the impedance in a series model for the resistance and the reactance. Press this again, frequency, impedance, a series model of inductance and capacitance. Pressing this again, screen 4 shows us the frequency and the magnitude, also the parallel mode of resistance and reactance. And press the arrow again. Frequency and now the phase. We saw the magnitude on the previous screen, and a parallel model again of inductance and capacitance. If you're really into antenna design, a lot of the theory, these numbers will mean a lot to you. Otherwise, typically when we're setting things up, SWR will get us in the ballpark. If you want to change the frequency by pressing the plus and minus keys here, you see it went up 10 kilohertz. There's up to 3760, 3770, and you can move it back down. Again, it's showing you the SWR changing. If you hold these down, they will change quickly. If you hold the arrow key here down for a couple seconds, it comes up and allows you to set the frequency. So I press it again. Now I can set the frequency, and the plus and minus buttons here change the value, and the left and right arrows moves the cursor. And you press this, and that's the frequency it would be using now. Hold this again, and it has some help tips, so I can bring that up, and it tells you what the keys will do. In the plus minus to adjust frequency, hold adjusts the frequency at 10 times. The left right arrow is our next screen, and the triangle and the square are run and stop. Pressing the plus will take us into the Multe mode. What this does is scans all the bands and sees what it can find for whatever antenna you have connected. So you saw it go through and scan here. So let's get this thing here back to page 1 here real quick. So it has these number of stars, so more stars the better across the band. So here's 20 meters and 17, 15, 12, 11, if you want to check a CB antenna, 10 meters, there's 6 meters on this antenna. It found a resonance at 2 meters, and one on 220 megs, 220.92 in fact. Let's go, and it'll cycle back around, bring it back to 20 meters, and when you press either the plus or the minus, it'll drop you into the ham mode that we'll get into deeper here in just a second. So now it shows you the SWR curve, and the white area is the active part of the band, the black are just past the band edges. Pressing the left arrow key will put the analyzer into ham mode, and what it does here is that it will scan the band, in this case 15 meters, from slightly below the band edge to slightly above. So the below and the above are the black, the white is the active band area, and it will tell you what the Lowest SWR is at the frequency shown here. So, and then you can use the arrow keys here to step through different bands. And by pressing the plus or minus will get you into the free mode, which I'll cover next. Pressing the right arrow puts the analyzer into the free mode. What it does here is that it'll sweep the band at the center frequency that you can enter. Here it's 3.5, the lower end of 80 meters, plus or minus 2.5 megs, and you can vary that. And there's two SWR numbers here at the bottom. So at the frequency shown here, SWR is 3.7, and there's a little solid line. So that's the marker frequency, the center. And there's a dashed line to the right of that, and it says the SWR minimum there is 1.12. And you can vary the frequency with the arrows here. So I can say move it up to 3.6. And when I got closer, the plus and minus here is not frequency. In this case, it's the bandwidth. So I can push this, and now it's 1 meg up and down from there. Blink, and let's go down to plus or minus 500 kc. And let's move it up in frequency here. Right now it's moving in 10 kc increments. Let's take it up to 3.75, let's say, and let it sweep. And that's what it shows there. If you want to manually set the center frequency here, you can hold the big arrow down here and press it again, and this is where you could move the cursor over and change the frequency there. Press the arrow. Now that's the center frequency. You can also save and recall your displays here. So let's say I'm in the ham mode. I've done a sweep of the 80 meter band. If I hold this down, I get a menu for save and load. So if I press the minus key here, I can, there's like I think 24 slots, yes. It says it's empty. I can press this again, and you can put a name on this. It's come up and said B80M, so I'm just going to accept that, press this here. Now let's say go over here to 60 meters, which this antenna doesn't do anything with, but I can hold this down, save. I want slot number 2, empty. Save. Here it has B60M, and put that in. If I want to go back and recall the 80 meter one now, I can hold this down, load. I'm at 2 and 2, so I want to go back to 1 of 2, press that, and it brings back the 80. So you can store a sweep, make some changes, do a measurement again, store that, and then compare the two. See if you're going in the right direction or not. Okay, to get into the settings of the device, there's a few things that you can set, a few parameters. If you hold this down, it'll bring you into adjust user settings. It's on screen 5. I press that again, and you can step through here and do things like turn your Bluetooth on and off, invert the screen, a timeout timer when it powers off, ITU regions, and we're in Americas, but you can, for the 3 different regions around the world, you can step through those. So this would set your bands that you're using. Band search normal, which is what we've been seeing here, a faster scan, and you can do a deeper, slower scan as well. So you have your choice there. Calibration, you can calibrate the unit if you have a known short, open, and a calibrated load, whatever impedance you would like to use. So you can self-calibrate. You can set what the system impedance is. And you have lots of choices here. So typically you want to leave it at the 50 ohm position. Factory reset, in case all else fails, you can do that. And cleared slots will clear any results that you have saved. Okay, take a quick look at the Android application. I have it on a tablet here. It's called AntScope, AntennaScope. You can select that, and it comes up, and it makes a Bluetooth connection. You see the Bluetooth is spinning here, so I can select that, and when it gets connected, you get this play button here. And one of the things we need to do here is to set what frequencies we're going to do the sweep of. So I've got 3500 to 4000 set for the 80 meter band. What I would really like to see is in this area here have push buttons for all the amateur bands, because you can scroll through a couple screens here. There's a calibration process, and it seems to know the ITU rate. It seems to know the ITU regions. Europe, Asia, 2 is Americas. I don't know what it does with that data. You can enter in what your velocity factor and cable length is here for some of the measurements, and you can pick a couple different languages. So once I have this frequency here I want to sweep, I can go back, and now I can press the button here, and it will do a sweep. So that's SWR. Here's a phase plot, impedance. There's a couple impedance plots here. There's a return loss plot, and there's a Smith chart. So I'd say it takes a little bit of experimentation to use this. There's also the AntScope app for the iOS devices. I have it on my iPad here. Again, it makes a Bluetooth connection, so it comes up, and it's looking for the device. There, it found it, and this apparently looks like it's size for an iPhone display, and you can increase it to make it larger, so I can tell it to take and connect. And unfortunately, the app is broke, and I've contacted RigExpert customer support, and they acknowledge that. What happens, you got start and end frequencies, or center and span, and there's a black box around the top ones there, and it seems like you would enter one or the other, but what happens is that when you start changing one value, they all start changing, which basically makes it almost impossible to set the frequencies you want. Again, they've acknowledged this. This really frustrated me for a while, and I also suggested to them when I was contacting them, really be nice to have buttons down here so you can preset for the ham bands. So I don't have to get out a frequency chart because I can't remember the start and the bottom and the top end of 17 meters or something. So that's the problem there. And you can have it scan how many points. So here it's going from 0 to 230 megacycles on my 80 meter dipole. So and you can scroll along here and see the data. There's also a Smith chart, pretty squirrely looking. There's a TDR chart, which I'm not going to do that because it takes a long time. I'm going to do that in the windows here in a minute. You can look at all the parameters, and you can move your cursor around on the Smith chart. So anyway, that needs some work, and they've acknowledged that. Now I'll look at AntScope for Windows. This is also available for Macintosh and Linux. The main area here in the center is where we'll see our plots. The top right here is where you can enter the start and stop or the center and range for frequency information. So I have this filled in here for 3.4 to 4.1 for the 80 meter band, as well as 100 kilohertz on each side of it. The gray area shows the band width here in the United States, and you can go into settings here and change this, let's say like to Europe, and you can see there the band is 3.5 to 3.8. Now we change that back to Americas, and also the program defaults into this dark theme, which I find hard to read with the blue on the black, so fortunately they provided this light scheme. There's tabs up here for different plots, so I have the SWR selected, and I'm going to tell it to do a single run. So it goes through there and scans the band, and this box here shows data where the cursor is, so my resonant is down here about 3.76 megahertz. I can look at a phase plot, a couple different impedance plots, a return loss, as well as a Smith chart. And I can move the little cursor around the circle here, and I can see all the values over here. The next thing that's kind of interesting is the time domain reflectometer plot. What this does is sends a pulse down the coax, looks for an impedance change, which means there will be a bounce coming back. It can measure that time that it took to send it out and receive it back, convert that to distance. So this will show you what's down the length of your coax. We'll do a run. And so over here on the left is where the antenna analyzer is. Here's a change here. This is about says 6.6 feet. I have about a 6-foot piece of coax here for a jumper to my antenna switch. Here's about another 7 feet down the line where my barrel is on the outside of the house to connect the jumper from the antenna switch out to the coax, which then runs down the conduit. And at this point here, so I come out of the ground to a barrel, and I know I have about 107 feet of coax in the conduit plus what's inside here. This says 125 feet, so that's probably about right. Then this is the distance here where it goes up the tower. Some little bumps there, and here's where the dipole is, the balun, at 191 feet. That's probably about right. You know, something you can do when you get a new row of coax, and so you get a 1,000-foot spool, put a connector on one end and do this. You should see a flat line. If you see any crazy stuff going on, you may have some bad coax. Again, you can export the data from the program to save for your documentation. You can import it. You can print the screen. You can do a screenshot. It'll save it to a file on your computer. I can also get a screenshot from the analyzer. It's just sitting in the home screen right now. So that's it for the basics of AntScope 2. And the last thing I'll show you really quick is the RigExpert flash tool. Fire that up. It comes up here and it's looking for the serial port. There we go. I can select next. And it tells me that the firmware in the device is 1.8 and the latest firmware available is 1.8. And if I want to update it, it'll get the file from the internet and automatically do that. So I can just press next, and there it's downloading. It says firmware update on the stick here, and the stick is not resetting, and it's all done. Well, that's a wrap for the RigExpert Stick 230 Antenna Analyzer. It's a pretty neat little device. It does a lot of measurements, probably more than I would ever use, but you know, gives me a check of what's going on. I like the TDR function with the software, so I can look at what's happening from the coax. It's, like I said, it's small enough to go in your shirt pocket. And you can put it in your go bag. And in fact, if you just bought an ICOM IC705, there's no antenna tuner. So you need one of these to go in your ICOM backpack so you can check your antenna ahead of time. Also, just looking on the RigExpert website, this video is recorded in mid-November, but from now until January 15th, 2021, they have some rebates on this and other of their antenna analyzers. Just checking on the DX Engineering page, they have this listed for $249. I don't know if that includes the rebate or not. Give the fine folks at DX Engineering a call and get your analyzer. Go forth and analyze. This is Randy. Thanks for watching K7AGE.